I think one of the things my father was proud of was when he coached the Louisville softball team.
We started out about the year I was a freshman in high school. We had a pitcher, Gneiting, who could really pitch a fast, underhand softball. But we became quite successful, and suddenly uniforms showed up, and I could see Ellsworth is taking it seriously.
Said him and Neil Erickson were coaching the team together.
By the time we went to the all-church tournament, which we qualified for, we were winning all of our games in southeastern Idaho. We got Salt Lake City, and we're hearing about Studio City, California, Long Beach, and some of these other famous wards that have been in the tournaments for years. First year we came in about 9th or 10th in the all-church tournament. The second year, and we came in the top 5, I believe, in the all-church tournament. So we were thrilled, and that was a great experience. One thing about Louisville, you get support.
Softball was a really big thing in Louisville in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. My older sister played, I played, my younger sister played, the young men in the warm board played, the elders had a team, they all played. It was church ball, but anybody in the community could play on the team. In Second Ward, we had a wonderful team. Of course, they probably did in First Ward too.
In preparing a program that will be for our benefit and for a fundraising effort to improve our community and our ballpark. We ask that we will be generous and will
Here they come now, out of the dugout. And there's nothing like a game.
There's nothing like a game, nothing in the world. There is nothing you can name that is anything like a game. And go Jamaica, Cuba, take you to Bermuda, Bahama, come pretty mama, Key Largo, Montego, baby, Montego,
we were going steady. We said no sir, cause we're not ready. We got some important things to do, like graduating from BYU sometime later on.
One of our favorite things during the winter was ice skating over on the ice rink in the ballpark.
I could put my skates on at my house, walk through the snow, skate down the road, and go into the arena to the skating rink. We'd play Crack the Whip. I think 2 of my concussions and whiplashes came from Crack the Whip. But those were just amazing times. And if we weren't over on the skating pond, we were up on the cellar on our sleds, go right across the road, look both ways to make sure nobody was coming, and then we would climb up again.
There was a huge cultural hall with a stage behind the chapel. And then we'd have our Christmas dinners there, and primary always used to have the kids go up on the stage and put the parts on.
In my dad's spare time, he decided that he wanted to play with horses. He loved to pull the children on sleighs in the winter because our streets were like straight ice and we had a lot of snow at that point in time. And his horses would whirl on the ice with about 10 sleighs hooked on behind them. And my dad was not happy until he had thrown every child off of their sleigh.
Because of the bells that Dad had on the rumps of the horses, when he would go down the street, all of the kids would run out and say, "Jack, Jack, can we have a ride with you on the horses today?" And he'd say, "Well, have to ask your parents." Winter was a special time for Dad. He went out 6 days a week and hitched up his horses. And when he would sit in his room and he could no longer hold horses because his muscles had got old, and that he would say, "Christmas just isn't any fun anymore."
Every Christmas, my mother would make a big Christmas plate of cookies and candies. And I know it was at least 30 that we took around as a family and would visit all these people and sing to them and give them a plate of goodies.
This is Neil Gilchrist. He's our only Civil War veteran that I know of. And actually, he wasn't really. So he, at age 17, went and joined the Union Army and was a bugler. And then they found out he was only 17. So they sent him home. And I'm pretty sure he had the store where Tolman's had their store.
I am Pamela Tolman Jones. My parents were Wendell and Maureen Tolman. They moved to Louisville in 1958.
My dad wanted to be an independent business owner and wanted to work for himself and not for other people. My father was in World War II, and he was in Saipan, Okinawa, and I know he saw some awful things, and he never ever wanted to talk about the war.
The soldiers had forced their own people over a cliff, and many of them died. So the time that Tom Perry and Wendell Tolman served in the Marines, that was their assignment, is to pick up those bodies. They sat together and reminisced, and they could not hold back the tears. This affected them all the rest of their lives.
From what I learned later, not from my father, because he never talked about the war, is that he typed up the death notices to the parents of the soldiers that died. That was probably a really difficult thing for him to ever forget. And he also helped the Japanese people after they dropped the bomb on Hiroshima.
They got ready to leave. They were at the bus, and here come all these Japanese people thanking Dad and Tom Perry for rebuilding their churches and their homes and for helping them out. When we first moved to Louisville, the only place there was to live was an old home across east of the store. And it had been there for a long time. But my mother made it really nice and In fact, I think I remember Reed Hunter coming there home teaching once, and he said, wow, this looks really nice in here, because from the outside it's weather beaten.
But with 6 kids, it was very hard to have all of us in the house.
My dad said that he gave all the credit for his business to my mother because she was such a good secretary. Kids' job to start out with, we had to sort the pop bottles, and then we went from there to checking. All 6 of us learned how to make change, not like today. You can't go through a drive-through and get the right change. So my dad, when he first moved to Louisville, he didn't have a butcher truck. He didn't even have a pickup. He had an old Plymouth station wagon, and it was an aqua-colored station wagon. And so he would drive out to the farm in the station wagon, butcher the beef, and put the quarters or the halves in the back of the station wagon.
We never had to go buy groceries. We would just go to Tolman Merck. What are we going to have for dinner? Go over to the store and get whatever you want.
Tolman store. I mean, that's where we did our shopping. You had your beef butchered, you had the freezers, the lockers there, and he was always there. And he was a little bit stern, but always kind.
We would have sleepovers at Annette's house. She would go in and get the key to the store, and we would quietly go into the store and get a bag of potato chips, or maybe 2.
It was very good childhood, living in a small community. Everybody knew everybody. We all got along well. We had a canal that ran through Louisville, and we would go get in the canal, and of course it wasn't very clean. Once in a while you'd see a sheep go by or something in the canal, but we would go swimming anyway.
We'd go up east of Ball Brothers Warehouse and put inner tubes in. That way we could go under the bridge and over the checks.
And they would get out of the cold water and run up and lay on the pavement. It was nice and warm, and then when they saw cars coming, they would jump up and run back and jump in the canal.
And I wish I could remember his name. He came down in his truck, one of the older guys that lives in Louisville, and he gave us kids what for? You kids get off the road! You're gonna get run over! And there was a lot of dead stuff floating down that canal, but we loved it. That was our swimming pool.
Well, we'd play over to the Roundses, which was just east of us. Robert Rounds and Boyd Rounds, Corley Rounds. Mother used to fix tinfoil dinners for us that we'd go up the railroad tracks a ways and get a little fire and put it on the edges of the fire and let them cook while we played in the mud and the water and go home and get in trouble. We always overdid our timeline. Yeah, Dad was raised in Louisville. Our first home was in Louisville, and he didn't want to leave Louisville. He liked the people that were in it. When we was building the home, Ryan had come over and playing the sawdust to make Mother mad, and she'd scold him a little bit, and he'd just laugh.
Ellen worked with the architect to create the home that she wanted.
My girls with their cousins played a lot, and we had a big barrel pit by our house that had tall weeds in it. One day they were out in the barrel pit along the road and came running in and bringing me this handful of jewelry. And they said, "Look what we found, Mom, look what we found." And it had been reported in our ward and that Gail and Ellen Clement's home had been burglarized.
The house got broke into. We were up in Island Park at our cabin, but the neighbor, gal across the street, had seen a car backed right up to the door of the house. And they had just loaded televisions, and they'd gone through Mom's jewelry, and I had a pistol.
So I called and asked, and in fact it was the jewelry that was stolen from Gail and Ellen's home.
The police were able to recover most of the stuff. They chased him up the canal bank. The only thing we didn't recover was my pistol. So one of them got away with my pistol.
Ellen was a quiet person and not one to draw attention to herself at all, although she was a really lovely lady.
Mom was well known for always being dressed. She was always dressed or overdressed for the occasion. In fact, Dad always teased her that she used to wear high heels to garden in. Dad's kind of a prankster at times. He had thought this out in advance, and somebody else rented the camera so he could get this on film. For years, every time the family got together and we got out the old movies, we'd have to stop at this point and run it back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, put Mom in the cart and throw her out, put her in the cart and throw her out, and she would sit there and say, "Damn you, Gail!"
I knew that Clements had money, but I didn't see them as holding that over other people or not being generous. Gail loved the big yard that was to the north of the house with the trees and the grass, and he loved that.
It was a horse pasture, and none of us had horses anymore, and it was just a pain to maintain it that way. So they wanted to just make something pretty and nice, and so Mother kind of come up with a little design there of how to plant the trees and what to do. But anyway, I mowed that thing for years, and I swore when I owned a house, it would have a little yard, so I would never have to mow grass like that again.
Had some of the sisters in the ward want to go as her visiting teacher, feeling a little bit like she was better than they were. I never found that. When I went to her place, I was just invited in, and she was so gracious and kind. And
when I moved here and they made me homemaking teacher, they told me, "Don't ask Ellen Clement or Glenn Ellsworth to do anything for you because they won't." They were the first two I asked, and they did a fabulous job.
You know, one other thing I think about Gail Clement was he was mayor of Louisville the same time as Bishop. They got quite a bit of things done to Louisville at that time. The ditches all had to be cleaned by shovels every year. And people were getting older, and younger ones that are around there didn't want to do it. Council decided to bury the ditches, make them safer.
So my dad had been talking for a while about putting up a sign in Louisville on a piece of land that he owned that was right at the end of Main Street. And when my dad started talking about that, I got really excited because I thought, oh, we can do something big here. Had a leaf as kind of the main feature, and this was a throwback to all of the giant trees that used to line Main Street in Louisville and that were on the cover of the Louisville Centennial book. Alan Batt down the road in Grant, he he was telling my dad that he liked the Louisville sign, and so he's like, can your daughter design something for Grant? Just for fun, put together a sign, and I wrote, Grant, you're almost to Louisville. It didn't get made.
You know, something I'm pretty proud of is the group in the community that got together, and we're doing a Louisville Veterans Memorial where we'll have all the veterans etched in stone.
Yeah, there's a total of 68 and 48's what?
And I would recommend doing a pretty substantial concrete, or if you wanted, maybe even a granite foundation.
Doug said we had somewhere around 300 names so far, so with more to come, I'm sure.
Kind of challenging engraving these and printing the stencil, but it'll be really cool.
We're going to dedicate on the 24th of May, not even 6 months time from start to finish. And the things we're doing in there is going to be so beautiful, and so recognizing that those people have served. People got involved I didn't even expect to see in it. And it's really opened my eyes to how much they really care about our community.
My name is Rosalie Ball Moss Jones. My father, Ronald Ball's father, was Alfred William Ball, and my grandmother's name was Ann Taylor Walker Ball. Grandma and Grandpa Ball had 10 children. The oldest was Helen, then there's Uncle Vernon, and Uncle Bud, and my dad. That was the Ball brothers. And then Edna, and Ann, and Ora, and Alta, and then Wanda was the youngest. I used to partner with my cousin Jenny Ball, and we would have our baskets and we'd pick them up. One would hold the sack, the other would dump them. And we got 7 cents a sack. And the goal was to get 300 sacks in a day. Jenny and I tried and tried and tried, but I think we made it once. And then pretty quick, the migrant workers would start using just a belt, and they would have hooks on the back of this big belt that went around their waist. As they filled one, they could reach around and put another one on and just keep going. It's so different than it is now.
Loved growing up here. My dad grew spuds for most of the time. Me growing up, so I participated in spud harvest every year, where we would get 2 weeks off of school, and that's how I made my money for the year, was standing next to a conveyor belt and picking dirt clods and dead birds and old farming implement that came along, rotten spuds. After we get the potatoes stored in the cellar, then sometimes they'd go to my grandfather's warehouse, and that's where they would get boxed up or bagged up and then shipped out.
So when I was in 9th grade, I decided I wanted to start saving money to go to college. And so I asked my dad, I said, what do you think about going to work at the warehouse?
My name is Trevor Belknap. I'm the general manager of Ball Brothers Produce in Louisville, Idaho. Ball Brothers Produce started in the early 1940s, around 1942. 3 brothers started it, Leland, Vernon, and Ronald.
My dad was in charge of the sheep, and my uncle Ronald was in charge of the warehouse. His older brother was in charge of the farms. His name was Vernon.
As the brothers aged and got older and sold shares, Ronald Ball ended up owning the produce facility entirely himself. Ronald passed the business on to his sons, R.J. Ronald Ball Jr. and Robert Ball and Carl Ball. This produce facility is a wash and package facility, so we bring in raw potatoes that are dirty as if they just came out of the field. So the process for washing is very simple. The water is pumped into the canals and that moves the potatoes by a flume. And as they tumble and roll through the canal and make corners, they bunch up against each other and they rub against each other, and that's how they spread it. And then from there it goes into initial sizer that drops out what we call the undersize. Anything under 4 ounces or less drops out and goes straight onto what we call our culls or wash process. Anything larger than that goes through an optical sorter. The optical sorter has a camera system that takes a picture of every potato as it comes across.
I did not realize that when you work at the warehouse, you start at 8 in the morning, you quit at 6 at night, you've got an hour for lunch, and you stand all day long. I can still smell what that warehouse smelled like, what it sounded like.
One of my childhood smells is potatoes and rotten potatoes, because the smell of rotten potatoes does not get out of a building. Once it's there, it sets in.
About the time I was finishing high school, Gail Clement and Von Walker and Dad and Von, it all been a potato business. The Ball brothers, they felt like a potato had more potential.
A couple of young men, Ross and Gail Clement, that were very innovative, very forward-looking, decided they were going to build a processing plant to make what they call potato flakes.
The process of dehydrating potatoes come about from World War II and the need to get food to the troops, and you couldn't ship fresh food that far, it would spoil. Well, Dad and Ross had a potato warehouse in Louisville. They would ship fresh potatoes, but you always have the off-grade potatoes, the cull potatoes as we would refer to them. And it was always a trouble getting rid of those. Of course, they didn't have the funds to start a business like that, so they went everywhere they could, to relatives, to local people.
The Ellsworths, the Balls, the Walkers, the Taylors, and others had bought 10%, 15%, 20%. That's where the money came from this, to get this thing going, just from these local farmers. Warren Denning was the manager of Roger Brothers. He got a drafting board on site and was able to draw the plans right there on site. And that was the beginning of Idaho Fresh-pak.
So we're about 350 employees here at the Louisville facility.
So all of our potatoes are locally sourced, and everyone that runs through all of our facilities comes from the great state of Idaho. It was really a big kitchen. We process our potatoes the same way that you would at home. We wash them, we peel them, we cook them, and then the biggest difference is we take the water out and dehydrate them.
3 plants are located in Louisville, where we're sitting currently. That's our oldest facility. That's the one that started the company. We have a facility 13 miles away in Idaho Falls, and then also a factory in Rupert, Idaho.
We take the potatoes that production has dried, we dump them into our equipment and add some flavoring to them to make them buttery home style or roasted garlic or loaded baked. The one unique thing about Louisville is we package 100% of our food service items for Idahoan and 25% of the retail items.
This factory, when I started here 13 years ago, was doing all of our retail. As we've grown our product base, we've been able to expand our other facilities.
At the Louisville facility, we process a little bit under 1 million pounds of potatoes a day when we're running. That equates to roughly 20 semis of potatoes a day. You can find us pretty much at every traditional retailer that's out there. Walmart's, Kroger's, Albertsons of the world's, H-E-B's, Publix. We're in all of those supermarkets.
I'm Richard Barney, and my mother was Lucy Barney. She was a Hanson. She grew up in the Shelley area. And then my grandmother was Blanche Fife, which was Wallace Fife's daughter. And of course there was Irma Brown, Rosetta Hancock that were sisters to her that were right here in Louisville as well. My dad was Leland Barney. And my granddad was Wells Barney. And he moved here in about 1914. What made him probably one of the better horsemen. He understood the horses, but he respected them, but he demanded their respect. Over the years, as growing up at his side here on the farm and everything, I saw him take some horses that other people could not get along with and make him an excellent horse. I've been born and raised here in Louisville. I've spent my whole life here. We never did have a lot of extra time to be involved in school sports and everything because we always had plenty of work to do on the farm. I had a good relationship with my family and with my granddad and everything. That's one of the most cherished memories I've got is being able to, the time that I was able to spend with him. And we were sitting at the fair one day and we always went by Barney Shires, but I just wanted to come up with a little something different, and I thought Whispering Wells. We're constantly reminded of things that he taught us and what to look for, and so we feel like he's still whispering to us.
So Wells had a son-in-law named Marion Rosen. He was married to Shirley, Wells's daughter, and he fixed clocks. He had all sorts of cuckoo clocks that he'd gotten him. I think he got one from Germany that he gave him.
I think I've had some of the best pulling teams that is ever in this country.
What year was it?
I've had more teams in the pulling matches than anybody in the country. And I never did have any luck with somebody else's pulling horses. I've only had one or two that I've ever bought that's been really good enough. Never one day I made myself.
So did your dad mostly farm?
No, he didn't like to farm.
No, didn't he?
No, he wasn't a farmer. I don't remember him ever farming, only maybe just a little piece of ground once in a while till he come to Idaho. Loaded furniture and stuff in the boxcar. Some of us kids rode in the boxcar. Landed over in Roberts. One cold March day. Neil Erickson said he'd heard it, and Ronnie told me about it afterwards.
Yeah?
He says Ambry Thomas said the best thing that ever happened to Louisville was when the Barneys moved here.
That's where people came to the Eastern Idaho State Fair in Blackfoot, and they wanted to do a photo shoot of Idaho boys. This is not what Richard would have ever worn. Wells really liked the... And then this is our son Brant with the horse. He actually got some calls from men after that came out. He wasn't interested.
Louisville was a very horsey town. We did a lot of our farming work with teams of horses. There were places, many places there where we could not take a vehicle. And Tom went to Wells to learn how to really utilize his horses. He was a master, Wells was, at breaking horses.
Riding horses was a big thing for us to do, especially on Saturdays. And a lot of the kids, the same age, my age, we would get together and ride. One place was out to the old Knolls, the junkyard.
We would go horse riding every Saturday, and we would go up on the knolls, but we were young, unbelievably young. I wasn't in school yet, so I would have been 5 years old. I know my sister wasn't, Kathleen, so she would have been 4. And we'd go over to my cousin Luann Walker's, and we were quite a herd.
My grandpa Walker was William B. or Bill, they called him. And he taught me how to ride a horse. It was a Palomino in essence, and my favorite kind of horse is a Palomino, and I called her Babe.
My brother George, Clement, just younger than myself, he had a buckskin horse, and he would let me borrow it and ride up into Louisville in the afternoons to meet friends. And we met at Elaine Ball's home so often that we actually had trails in the barrel pits by the canals and along ditch banks.